Clash Royale has 39 Evo cards right now, but here's the problem. Most players are upgrading the wrong ones all the time. Some Evos look broken but are actually a complete waste of your shards, and others barely get talked about. They secretly dominate high ladder and competitive play with ease. So today, we're gonna be ranking all 39 Evos from worst to best based on the new updated meta, usage rate of these cards, and how much value they actually give your deck based on the recent balance changes. If you've ever struggled on ladder, wasted your Evo shards on trash Evos, or wondered why certain decks completely destroy you for no reason, this video will save you hours of grinding cause the meta has changed and you don't want to be left behind using outdated Evos. Coming in at 39, we got the Goblin Giant Evo, and honestly, this card just feels completely out of place in the direction the meta is headed. The Goblin Giant has always relied on overwhelming pressure with support troops, but his HP and his Evo card literally is so bad right now, you wouldn't even want to go that direction unless it gets a massive buff. Royale API shows Goblin Giant Evo barely appearing in meta decks with usage close to 1% or even lower than that, and the community sentiment on Reddit is pretty clear. The card just feels outdated compared to the newer Evos for the meta right now. The Evo doesn't provide enough immediate value or tempo swing compared to the other Evos or even its former self before the series of nerfs it received, which I think kill the card at the moment. Coming in at number 38, we got the Bomber Evo, and it's super cheap and gives decent splash damage, but the Evo just doesn't offer enough impact compared to the other splash options. It's extremely replaceable with cards like the Executioner, Valkyrie, Baby Dragon, and even the E-Jag, which just got nerfed, which provides more reliable value. The current meta shift towards control and some beatdown decks also hurts the Bomber heavily. Control players will run stronger Evos or heroes, and when compared to them, the Bomber Evo rarely survives long enough to create consistent value. Even in Goblin Drill or Cycle decks where the Bomber usually shines, players are starting to prefer safer Evos which can be reliable over time. Coming in at number 37, we got the Ice Spirit Evo. The Ice Spirit has always been a solid utility card, but the Evo doesn't change its role enough to justify using it over the regular Ice Spirit. It feels like it does the exact same thing, and the Ice Spirit Evo only mattered when it froze 3 times. It doesn't really change any interactions. Royale API shows it being used at 1%, which is super low for a 1 elixir Evo. Coming in at number 36, we got the Barbarians Evo. Even with the recent 3% HP buff, the 7% hit speed nerf makes them noticeably slower and less threatening overall. This will make it a lot worse compared to it before, even though it survives the fireball. With the Hero Barbarian Barrel and the Hero Magic Archer becoming meta, Barbarians Evo are gonna struggle to defend well or to generate any sort of value. Control decks remove them efficiently, and beatdown decks simply overpower them, and again, fast-paced decks run riots on them. Royale API data shows low ladder usage, and the community reaction to the balance changes have been mostly negative for the Barbarians. Many players feel that the hit speed nerf outweighs the survivability buff, and I personally feel like the Evo Barbs just aren't a good card right now. Coming in at number 35, we got the Evo Skeletons. Look, they can provide strong defensive cycling and distraction value, but the current meta changes really hurt its usage. The addition of the Hero Barbarian Barrel and the Hero Magic Archer gives players extremely efficient answers to cheap swarms, which was the main problem from last season. Because of that, getting consistent value from the Evo Skeletons becomes much harder. Control and beatdown decks, which might become meta right now, don't rely on tight cycles interactions as much, which reduces the Skeleton's Evo impact even further. Royale API usage for the Evo Skeletons have been declining to around 3%, and players would rather use the regular Skeletons than the Evo version, just like the Ice Spirit. Coming in at number 34, we got the Archers Evo. The Evo gives the Archers extra survivability and pressure value, but the problem is simple. They're only really played in Expo style cycle decks. According to Royale API, the Archers Evo sit around 3% with a 51% win rate, which shows that they're viable but extremely niche. You mainly see them in Expo cycle and defensive control decks where they help defend and slowly chip, but outside of that archetype, they don't really fit into the current meta. With the game shifting towards beatdown and heavier control decks, if Hyperbait slows down, the Archers won't really really fit into the meta anymore because X-Bow will get countered very easily. Coming in at number 33, we got the Dark Goblin Evo. Honestly, it pains me seeing this card this low. Even with the Evo improving pressure with the poison darts, the recent sight range reduction from 7.5 to 7 tiles makes them easier to remove and harder to keep alive. Royal APS shows the Dark Goblin around 12% usage, but the Evo itself isn't widely prioritized as it feels a lot weaker from how it was last year when it consistently got insane value and was a card that no one could ignore. He mainly shows up in log bait or hyper bait decks, but those decks are expected to decline with newer cards like the Hero Barbarian Barrel entering the game. I'm sure if beatdown decks are in, it's gonna shut him down easily because he struggles against tanks and heavier pushes which have spells like the arrows, and people can just ignore that when they're trying to build a big push. But the main issue is that he's so fragile at the moment and there's a ton of counters in the game right now. Coming in at number 32, we got the Wizard Evo. Look, the Wizard provides splash damage and strong defensive value, but there are simply better splash Evos available right now. It sits around 3% usage and 50% win rate, meaning players aren't trusting this card as much, and it's used a lot in lower ladder with the Brain Rot Mega Knight decks. I'll be honest, the Wizard Evo appears mostly in mid ladder control and defensive decks, but at top ladder, players prefer the Executioner, Baby Dragon, or the Valk Evo for more reliable value. The recent Hero Wizard edition also gives players alternative splash options, which reduces the Wizard Evo usage by a ton because the hero is a lot better even though it got nerfed. Before we move on to the next tip, make sure to like and hype the video and join the Discord group, which is linked in the description of this video, where we talk about everything. Coming in at number 31, we got the Hunter Evo. The Hunter is extremely strong close up and great against tanks, and the Royal API data shows him around 5% usage with about 50% win rate. You mainly see the Hunter in Royal Giant control decks and some split pressure decks with the Royal Hogs where he deletes tanks if left untouched. But the Evo requires perfect positioning to get value, and in a fast tempo environment, it's kind of inconsistent. With the meta shifting towards a different style after the Hyper Bait Kids decks have been nerfed with the new cards, the Hunter sometimes feels too matchup dependent to justify evolving, in my opinion. Coming in at number 30, we got the Knight Evo, and it's one of the most reliable defensive cards in the game, and Royal APS shows around 5% usage with around 51% win rate, showing that he's stable, but the Hero Knight overpowers the Evo version significantly. He's mainly used in minor control, X-Bow cycle, and other fast-paced decks and defensive control decks, acting as a cheap tank and defensive anchor. But the Evo just doesn't feel strong compared to the Hero version, which everyone is using right now. Coming in at number 29, we got the Firecracker Evo. It provides a solid long-range splash and that annoying factor, but now she has way too many counters and is too niche in terms of deck variety. According to Royal API, the Firecracker sits around 9% usage with around 45% win rate, mostly in Hog Cycle and rarely split lane control decks. Looking at the direction of the meta, the Firecracker becomes much easier to remove using the Hero Barbarian Barrel or well-timed spells. Also, the best Hog decks are also experimenting with the Furnace Evo instead of the Evo Firecracker for more consistent pressure at the moment right now. That is why her usage is slightly off and is on a decline. Don't get me wrong, she's still solid in fast cycle decks, but she doesn't provide that versatility that the other top Evos do. Coming in at number 28, we got the Musketeer Evo, and this one is slightly controversial because she can be way higher. Look, the Evo improves her one-time ability where she gets a ton of value, but she's facing major competition. Royal APS shows the Musketeer Evo around 7% usage and 52% win rate, primarily in minor balloon and Royal Hogs control decks. However, with the Hero Magic Archer entering the meta, many players are shifting away from the Evo Musketeer towards the Hero version for better lane pressure and ability value. That doesn't make the Musketeer Evo bad, it just means that she's no longer the optimal choice in many decks anymore, except for that minor loon deck that finished number 2 in the world. Coming in at number 27, we got the E-Drag Evo. Look, I saw the recent balance changes and it got a 5% HP buff, which is useful, but its chain damage was nerfed heavily, cutting its Evo impact significantly. The Royal APS shows the E-Drag around 6% usage with around 45% win rate, mostly in Golem and E-Giant beatdown decks. If the meta shifts towards controller beatdown, the E-Drag still provides reset value and air control, especially against Inferno units. But what throws me off is the chain damage nerf, which makes it noticeably weaker in swarm heavy interactions or while defending. But again, only time will tell, and let's see how it pans out. Coming in at number 26, we got the Royal Recruits Evo, and it mainly appears in Royal Hog split lane decks, sitting around 3% usage on Royal API. The Evo focuses on lane control, but its success heavily depends on hyperbait style pressure. I personally feel with the heroes, wide split pressure becomes easier to manage, especially with the hero Barbarian Barrel. Control decks now have a stronger defensive setup to stabilize both lanes, and in my opinion, this archetype will take a hit in general because of the Royal Hog's Evo nerf as well. Look, the card is not bad, but it has a ton of counters and it loses a lot of value when the meta shifts. Coming in at number 25, we got the Goblin Barrel Evo, and it's still strong in bait decks, and it sits around 11% usage because it's a quite popular card, and it has roughly 50 to 52% win rate according to Royal API. It's mainly played in log bait, skeleton barrel bait, and minor control decks. But the key issue is hyper bait as an archetype is getting directly nerfed by the hero Barbarian Barrel and other stronger splash cards in the game. Look, I get it, the Goblin Barrel still forces spells and creates pressure, but it's no longer as overwhelming as last season when it was peak hyper bait. Coming in at number 24, we got the Witch Evo. The Witch Evo was a top Evo because she used to get her health back from skeletons that she spawned, making her harder to overwhelm over time. Right now, the Witch sits around 6% usage with roughly 50% win rate, mainly appearing in Giant Beatdown or Graveyard decks and mostly in mid-ladder decks, and she's a lot weaker after her nerfs, but she's still pretty good, and this one could be controversial because she can be higher. The problem right now is the splash counters. With the hero Barbarian Barrel entering the game, the Witch's skeleton waves are much easier to neutralize cleanly, as people can just pop the new ability with the Barbarian Barrel and take her out. She thrives in slower matchups where she can stack value, and the current shift in meta means that she's mainly viable in beatdown or control decks, which means that she can still cook if the meta shifts. Coming in at number 23, we got the Skeleton Army Evo, and this one could be highly controversial. I personally think that Hyperbait is gonna slow down because of the hero Barbarian Barrel, but Royal API shows the Skarmy sitting around 8% usage with 51% win rate, primarily in log bait and skeleton barrel bait decks, and of course Hyperbait, and I predict it to be used a lot lower after the Hyperbait indirect nerf. Last season's Hyperbait meta, especially with the hero goblins, made this card oppressive. However, with the new heroes, I personally think the swarm heavy decks are expected to decline. And if this happens, control decks now have the driver's seat at the moment, and Hyperbait as a whole is cooked. If it shifts, I don't know. Coming in at number 22, we got the Furnace Evo. The Evo improves its pressure chip potential, as a ton of you guys might know from the Evo spam meta a few months back, and Royal API shows that the Furnace has a 5% usage, mostly in hog control and some mid-range chip decks. In a control or beatdown meta that could possibly be here, the Furnace actually gains value. It applies passive pressure while letting players defend safely. Unlike Hyperbait cards that rely on overwhelming swarms, the Furnace forces consistent small trades which can be solid over time. It's not that flashy, but it fits extremely well in slower games where tempo and chip damage matter more than burst pressure like Hyperbait. Coming in at number 21, we got the Lumberjack Evo. The Lumberjack Evo enhances his rage impact, making the ghost spawn while constantly attacking and making counter pushes more explosive. Royal API shows him used around 7% with a 51% win rate, mainly in Golem Beatdown and sometimes Royal Giant decks, and you can see him used in bridge spam decks as well. The key with the Lumberjack Evo is that he punishes overcommitments and creates massive tempo swings when paired with tanks. Unlike Swarm Evos, he scales with double elixir time, where his value can be lethal because of the raged Lumberjack Ghost. I personally like the Evo Lumberjack in bridge spam decks as well because the ghost factor is so key, man, and it gets you so much value. Coming in at number 20, we got the Bats Evo. The Bats recently received an 8% hit speed buff, which significantly improves their DPS output in my opinion, and will affect the Evo Bats for sure as they heal when they attack, making their heals way more consistent, which was the problem. Royal API shows the Bats are on 10% usage, and in my opinion it's gonna go up even further. It's used in minor control, lava decks, and some bait hybrid decks as well. But what's key is the hit speed change. Evo Bats are gonna be a lot harder to kill and will apply a lot more pressure. Since they're cheap, flexible, and fit into multiple archetypes, they're gonna be a dominant force if people use it right. Coming in at number 19, we got the Giant Snowball. The Snowball has always been a strong utility card with knockback and slow effect, but the Evo increases its control value by making making pushes easier to disrupt and mess up their tempo. Royal APS shows the snowballs at around 9% usage with around 51% win rate, mainly in control and goblin drill cycle and minor chip decks. If it becomes a control focused meta, the snowball actually gains value because of positioning and temper mattering a lot more than raw damage. The knockback and reset pushes protect defensive troops and create more solid counterattacks. This is going to be dominant in that goblin drill magic archer hero deck, which could be game defining. Coming in at number 18, we got the Inferno Dragon Evo. The Evo ramps up pressure and makes it harder to stop when melting tanks if it reaches a high octave of charge. Royal APS shows the Inferno Dragon around 7% usage with around 50% win rate, mainly appearing in Lava Hound, Beatdown Control, and Loon Freeze decks. When Beatdown or Control decks are played, especially Golem or Royal Giant, the Inferno Dragon Evo becomes extremely valuable. It forces heavy responses and deletes tanks faster than most defensive options when they don't have a reset. The only reason it isn't higher is consistency. It still struggles against reset heavy decks and fast pressure decks, but overall it's a solid card for free-to-play players if they can level it up. Coming in at number 17, we got the P.E.K.K.A. Evo. This card was in a rough spot for the last few seasons because of Hyperbait, and now that Hyperbait is indirectly getting nerfed through the new heroes and the nerf to the hero goblins, P.E.K.K.A. decks are gonna be dominating again. Royal APS shows 8% usage with roughly 52% win rate, mainly in P.E.K.K.A. bridge spam decks and other variants of P.E.K.K.A. control. She shuts down tanks efficiently and converts defense into huge pressure, especially with that split lane move. With the hero magic archer in play, we can see P.E.K.K.A. Evo decks climb higher instead of it being completely obsolete. Coming in at number 16, we got the Mega Knight Evo. The Mega Knight Evo just uppercuts everything and is perfect at shutting down pushes and creating counterattacks. Royal APS shows the Mega Knight around 12% usage, which I think is quite low, should be way higher, and 50% win rate, mainly in split lane bridge pressure decks and control archetypes, and he's mainly seen in mid-ladder menace decks where kids are just running random cards with him like the freeze or balloon. He benefits heavily from a controlled meta because he punishes overcommitment and stabilizes those crazy plays. While he's matchup dependent and expensive, his ability to swing tempo in one play keeps him a very strong card right now. Coming in at number 15, we got the Royal Giant Evo. The Royal Giant has been one of the most consistent win conditions in Clash Royale for years, and his Evo's main strength is that he adds knockback pressure that keeps defenders away while he attacks. Royal APS shows the Royal Giant around 15% usage with around 52% win rate, with the Fisherman and Lightning, which is solid and a consistent archetype which has stood the test of time. However, a recent hit speed adjustment reduces how permanently he can push back melee units, which slightly lowers his dominance compared to the previous seasons. But to be honest, dude, he's still a solid card on ladder because of his reliability and synergy with the other cards in his deck. No matter what happens, the Royal Giant Evo remains one of the safest win conditions to play in the game. Coming in at number 14, we got the Mortar Evo, and the main thing with this card is that it shoots a goblin alongside its boulder, increasing its DPS and making it much harder to defend cleanly. You can mainly see it used in motorcycle, minor control, and other defensive control decks. But what makes this card strong right now is tempo, man. It provides consistent chip while also defending efficiently, which fits perfectly into any sort of deck. The Mortar gets solid value for just 4 elixir, and even one shot is more than enough initially to get value. Another key point is that the Mortar can safely pressure from range while defending tanks, buying you time while attacking as well when needed. Coming in at number 13, we got the Goblin Drill Evo. The Goblin Drill Evo recently has become a much stronger card after the Jan update, spawning 2 goblins instead of just 1, massively improving its pressure output. Royal APS shows the Drill Evo on 10% usage with 55% win rate, mostly in Goblin Drill control and hybrid chip decks, and I have personally seen it dominate top 200 ladder after the buff. The extra spawn makes defense much harder and forces consistent work on this card. In this meta, the Goblin Drill Evo thrives because it creates genuine pressure while keeping the elixir trade solid, because people would need to spend more elixir just to defend the drill now. The only thing that drill players need to keep in mind is that the hero Barbarian Barrel will be good versus it, which means you need to be smart with your plays. It went from one of the weakest Evos to just a solid option overnight. The ability to constantly pressure towers while playing defense with these sort of decks makes it one of the most stable archetypes right now. Coming in at number 12, we got the Goblin Cage Evo. It sits around 8% usage on Royal API, and you can see it mainly used in Agent Control, Lava decks, and sometimes Graveyard decks. In the meta right now, the Cage thrives because it's a building that helps out on defense while setting up an immediate offensive on the counter attack when the Brawler's out. It's especially strong against Bridge Spam and tank decks that rely on predictable pushes which can be stopped. Coming in at number 11, we got the Skeleton Barrel Evo. The Evo adds guaranteed dead damage when destroyed, meaning you take tower damage even if you perfectly defend the skeletons, and keep this in mind guys, it's gonna be 2 Skeleton Barrels dead damage. Royal API shows a Skeleton Barrel around 10% usage with a 52% win rate, mainly in Hyper Bait, Log Bait, Minor Bait, or any sort of bait deck where it does super well. The guaranteed chip damage makes defending frustrating and forces spell usage early, which fits perfectly in bait strats. Even with the Hyper Bait getting weaker due to the new hero counters, the Skeleton Barrel Evo remains one of the most consistent pressure cards available, although it's not the strongest Evo like it used to be. Coming in at number 10, we got the Executioner Evo. The pushback value is key, making him one of the most reliable defensive splash units. Despite the recent 33% pushback reduction, he also received a 7% damage buff, keeping him extremely strong overall this season. You can see the Executioner Evo used around 7% usage with around 50% win rate, mainly in control decks and defensive decks as well, where he fits a variety of archetypes. He dominates swarm matchups, controls space effectively, and supports tanks extremely well while counterattacking. In a slower control meta, consistent splash and defensive stability are incredibly valuable in certain matchups. Even after the balance adjustments, the Evo Executioner remains one of the most versatile Evos available in my opinion. Coming in at number 9, we got the Royal Hogs Evo, and this card has been strong for the last few months because of the split lane pressure and it being used in a lot of Three Musketeer decks and other control decks. The Evo makes them even harder to defend by forcing faster responses and stronger positioning because it flies when deployed now. Royal API shows the Royal Hogs being used around 10% with a 51% win rate, and that is pretty good in my opinion. They were extremely dominant last season, but with the recent 18% landing damage reduction, makes them slightly less punishing while opponents don't have to have the perfect answer all the time. That lowers their immediate pressure, especially against certain meta decks. In my eyes, they still remain one of the best split lane win conditions in the game right now and fit perfectly into any sort of tempo based deck that you can find on Royal API, and you can just experiment with it. Even with the nerf, they continue to force constant pressure and mistakes where you can bait spells and just outplay off that. Coming in at number 8, we got the Balram Evo. The last time I checked, the Balram Evo topped the Royal API list with the highest win percent Evo in the entire game. The Balram Evo increases pressure potential and makes Bridge Spam pushes way harder to stop cleanly now that the hero goblins are bait in general's nerf. Royal API shows the Balram used around 7%, mainly in P.E.K.K.A Bridge Spam and Control Bridge Pressure decks and Control Bridge Spam decks. Last season, these decks struggled against Hyper Bait strats, but with the new hero additions weakening swarm based decks, Bridge Spam decks will become a lot stronger. The Balram Evo thrives in this meta because by forcing immediate reactions, and with the Hero Magic Archer and the Barbarian Barrel Hero, it can fit into a lot of Bridge Spam decks and could do wonders. I get it, it's a matchup dependent card, but when the meta is right, the Battle Ram's ability to create instant pressure becomes extremely valuable. Coming in at number 7, we got the Baby Dragon Evo. The Baby Dragon Evo single-handedly shifts tempo, making it one of the most versatile Evos available to use. Royal APS shows the Baby Dragon used around 12% with a 53% win rate, mainly in Golem, Lava, and other control beatdown decks, but in my opinion, this card can be used anywhere, man. What makes the Baby Dragon so strong is flexibility. It provides air defense, splash damage, and reliable support in almost any archetype, while providing that gust effect, giving your troops a much stronger boost in terms of pace, and your enemy's attack slows down significantly. As I said before, it fits into multiple decks and scales well into late games where counterattack is important and rarely feels like a bad investment. Coming in at number 6, we got the Zap Evo. The Zap Zap Evo leaves behind a growing electric field after the initial hit, applying damage and stun effect as it expands. Royal APS shows a Zap use 16% usage and roughly 51% win rate, making it one of the most played spell Evos or one of the most used cards in the game. The Evo effect makes defending pushes cleaner and stops up following swarm placements, which is extremely valuable up against bait and cycle strats, and because it's cheap and flexible, it fits into almost every deck. Look, this card might not look flashy, but its reliability and versatility makes it one of the strongest Evo in the game. Coming in at number 5, we got the Wallbreaker's Evo. The Evo increases the pressure and chip potential, forcing constant defensive responses, and Royal APS shows Wallbreakers are used around 10% with a 53% win rate, mainly in minor control, goblin drill control, and fast pressure decks. They pretty much thrive in control environments because they create that immediate threat while keeping the elixir traits efficient. With stronger defensive heroes entering the game, decks that apply fast pressure and force reactions gain value, and the Wallbreakers Evo do exactly that. They're cheap, dangerous, and incredibly effective at creating tempo advantages where you can pretty much capitalize. Coming in at number 4, we got the Tesla Evo. The Tesla Evo releases a large electric pulse when deployed, damaging and stunning nearby enemies. Royal APS shows the Tesla use around 5%, mostly in hog control and other defensive control decks where defense is a key part of their deck. The pulse that the Evo Tesla has creates passive defense into an instant tempo swing. In a meta with hog pressure, royal hogs, and all sorts of archetypes being experimented, it clears support units and stabilizes defenses immediately, and in my opinion, it's one of the best free-to-play investments because you can use it across multiple archetypes. Coming in at number 3, we got the Royal Ghost Evo. Even after the recent invisibility nerf, he still provides incredible value for 3 elixir. His versatility allows him to fit into multiple archetypes and consistently generate positive trades. The Evo enhances his pressure, allowing him to control the game and punish slow reactions extremely efficiently. Royal APS shows the Royal Ghost around 8% usage with 53% win rate, mostly in bird spam and control based decks, and in my opinion, only a few Evos offer this much pressure and flexibility at such a low cost. Coming in at number 2, we got the Valk Evo. The Valk Evo adds a pull effect that drags nearby enemies into her spin attack, turning her into one of the strongest defensive units in the game. Royal APS shows the Valk around 15% usage with 54% win rate, making her one of the most reliable Evos available. She shuts down swarms, bridge spam, and split pushes efficiently, which makes her valuable at every level of play from low ladder to top ladder. No matter what the meta looks like, the Valk Evo always finds value, which is exactly why she ranks near the top, and for the free-to-play players, she's an Evo you must have. And taking the number 1 spot, we got the Cannon Evo. The Cannon Evo fires a burst of splash damage shots on deployment, instantly disrupting pushes and creating massive defensive value. Royal APS shows the Cannon Evo at around 9% usage with a 55% win rate, making it one of the highest performing Evos overall. Even after the previous nerfs, the value it provides per elixir is unmatched. It stops tanks, controls tempo, and fits perfectly into any sort of deck that dominates the current meta. The efficiency, reliability, and momentum control it provides makes the Cannon Evo the best Evo in Clash right now in my eyes. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and if you want to know the card that literally gives free wins to players all the time in Clash Royale, click on this video. Bye.